As launch of Dragon Soul is edging closer and closer, new things keep getting found and Blizzard keep completely changing their mind. So if you don't know already, there was meant to be 2 rounds of Dragon Soul testing on the PTR, but now they've dropped less than 24 hours before it's actually going to be open that there's going to be PTR tonight for the whole weekend again. Now, this is kind of good and bad. I mean, giving such short notice is a bit of a nightmare. Even our guild, we're not really going to be able to do much testing at all. We might get a couple of hours tonight and then some time on Sunday, but it was such short notice. No one could change their plans, so, you know, quite annoying. But what they've also done is either sneakily or unintentionally, if you queue for an Inferno dungeon on the PTR right now, or at least if you walk in, because I've done it as a walk-in, as you can see in Stonecore at the moment, I've activated the mysterious elemental device, which has actually enabled the new Twilight Dungeons, so we can see exactly what they do now. The buff that the mobs have got theirself is their damage is increased by 50%, exactly the same as Inferno, but their health is now increased by 150%. That is actually 50% up on the amount of health that they've got right now if you're doing them on live. Specifically, boss attacks also have a chance to summon blood globules of Shumar. So, by the looks of it, without actually going to a boss yet, we'll be doing some when I'm on stream later. Kick.com/Scottejaye if you want to come over and watch us do them. When I do some of these on stream later, I'll confirm exactly what this is, but I'm guessing the bosses just spawn some ads, because myself and Chunk was actually pulling some of this trash fairly unsuccessfully, and we were seeing no ads spawn, and it does specifically say boss attacks. But what about the thing that's going to counteract the extra 50% health that they all get? Well, this is where that Signet of the Wormrest Accord comes in, which we spoke about in a video a couple of days ago. When you talk to this little fella, he's going to give you one of 4 buffs. That's either gifted a red Dragonflight, bronze Dragonflight, green Dragonflight, or blue Dragonflight. Now, some of these are a little bit weird. Firstly, let's just talk through what they actually do. Red Dragonflight is going to give you, upon a successful block, dodge, or parry, instantly unleash a frontal cone of fire. This effect cannot be triggered more than once every second. Obviously, this is going to be a tank buff, and if it's anything like the Thorns version of this that we got back in the Gamma Dungeons, it's probably going to slap pretty hard as well. Next up is Bronze, which is while not taking any damage for 10 seconds, you gain a stack in haste buff, and upon taking damage, a stack of this haste buff is removed. Now, at the moment, every time you gain a stack, it's got this really annoying little fire breath that goes off, and no, this fire breath isn't doing damage because that was the first thing I tested. But this does stack 10 times, giving you 100% melee range and spellcasting speed when it's fully stacked up. So that's really good, but you can't take damage. So if you get hit by just random AoE or anything like that, it's going to remove a stack. But this is more than likely going to be the one that every DPS uses, which we'll get onto in a minute. So the next one is the green Dragonflight. Now, your direct healing spellcasts grant you a stack in damage buff, while your damaging spellcasts grant a stack in healing buff. Now, again, this is very similar to what we got in the Gamma Dungeons, but the interesting thing is, putting 1 healing rain down, for example, stacks this thing up really, really fast, because every tick of healing rain is actually given a stack. So this again stacks 10 times, giving you 100% extra damage. And when you're casting damaging spells, it's a completely different buff that also stacks up to 100%. So obviously this is encouraging you as a healer to do as much damage as you can. And while you're doing that damage, obviously your heals are going to do more, so you actually need to spend less time healing. I really like this one, to be fair. I did almost die trying to demonstrate that, though. And finally, the buff that I don't actually like at all, even though on paper it sounds great, which is gifted the blue Dragonflight. Now, what this does is, while not moving for 10 seconds, you gain a stack in damage buff, and upon moving, a stack of the damage buff is removed. Again, this stacks 10 times, giving 100% damage, and when you move, it gives you a debuff where you can't gain stacks for that time. The problem is, if I let this stack up, you'll see the most minor movement will remove multiple stacks. While that stacks up, think about how rough this is actually for melee. As melee, you don't want to take the one where you've got to stand still, because if a tank moves, you're just never going to have the buff. And as a melee DPS, you're at most risk of getting random AoE or cleaves or anything like that. So actually, the other buff, where you don't need to stand still, so the stacking, like haste buff, you've probably got a higher chance of actually losing it. So I'd say, yeah, definitely these buffs are a lot more friendly to range than they are to melee. But if you look, I've got 7 stacks. If I do the tiniest little step, you'll see it go from 7 down to 5. I lost 2 stacks with that minor piece of movement. Now, while this debuff's up, you still can lose stacks. So it's not like you're safe to move while the debuff's up and you can't gain stacks. It's just whenever you move. The most minor little bit of movement, you could lose 2 stacks like you saw there. So when you're wanting to get through these dungeons fast, if you've got a pumper group, you're going to be moving pretty much all the time. You're probably going to pull this trash pack, for example, in front of us, and you'll kill it before it's fully stacked up, and then you're moving and you're losing it. So I actually think the haste buff is going to be all round the one that every DPS takes, because at least you can avoid damage to keep your stacks. You can hopefully not get hit by stuff that's obvious to keep your stacks, whereas moving, you kind of can't control that, because you want to get through the dungeon nice and fast. Oh, another thing that I've seen people complaining about is the Chaos Orbs were still soulbound in one of the earlier PTRs as well, whereas that has actually changed now. And if you don't know, as an Elemental Shaman, this has actually been the case last weekend as well. But obviously, the 2 set has now gone back to the original 2 set values from Dragon Soul. You only get a chance of reducing the cooldown on your Fire Rally rather than it fully resetting. I know I'm a bit late to the party on mentioning that as an Elemental Shaman main, but it was kind of obvious. We already knew that that was going to change, but I thought I'd just throw it in at the end anyway, why not? So yeah, the bosses and everything are going to have another 50% health, but hopefully with these buffs and the amount of damage we're going to be doing, if we can maintain these buffs, the bosses and that should die a lot faster than they do currently in the Inferno dungeons. I will post another video once I've actually done them firsthand rather than just gone inside the instance and had a look at what the buffs are. So again, I'll be doing that on stream later, so if you want to come and join in Friday night, have a few beers and play some WoW, you know where to find me. As always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Check out Rested XP in the pinned comment in the description if you want a guide for the fastest way to level on any version of World of Warcraft, whatever one you play. I'll see you on the next one.